If your child or grandchild struggles with addiction, a sudden inheritance could do them more harm than good. So, today we're going to talk about some of the risks of leaving money to a loved one who's battling these substance abuse issues, and then some of the different options that you have to help protect them without enabling their addiction. Welcome in. This is New York's Asset Protection Roundtable, a three pillars of protection program. Good to have you on the show again as we kind of get into a more of a serious topic, but one I'm sure Ted, more and more families are dealing with. It seems like substance abuse has been on the rise for a number of years.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly something that is becoming challenging, and something we're dealing with, regularly. Sure.
We'll get into that today. Again, we'll talk about the issues at hand, some of the risks that you might have if you have someone in your life that has substance problems, and then some options you might have for passing along that inheritance. But how are things otherwise in the office for you, Ted?
Oh, everything's fine. Summer's here, and the warm weather has arrived, and we're just dealing with it.
Yeah, more and more people, I'm sure, staying in right now indoors as it has been absolutely scorching over the last few days. And hey, it is the summer, so hopefully you make the best of it and able to cool down when given the opportunity. But we want to hop into today's show, and if you have questions for Ted, always encourage you to get in touch. AlatsusLawFirm.com. That is the website you'll find. Not only the option to schedule a meeting with Ted and the team there, but also there's a lot of resources and tools that you can access there on estate planning if you want to learn more. And the number as well, 718-233-2903. So again, we want to kind of get into some of the different options you might have here because alcohol, drug problems are on the rise. So let's kind of, before we get into this, what are the major issues at hand here, Ted, if you have this situation in your family and you're trying to think through it?
Well, I mean, you certainly there's the emotional tug of wanting to make sure that you're taking care of someone you love, but then there's also the concern that you don't want to be in a situation where you're making it easier for them to engage in their habit and make it worse for them over the long haul. So there's lots of things you want to think about when you're dealing with this particular issue, and just trying to do what's right, what's fair, and try to keep harmony in the family as well. So lots of different things going on when you're thinking about it.
All right. So that's kind of the issue to kind of set the table for our discussion. And, there are a lot of risks. Obviously, I think anyone in this position or maybe, working through this within their state is probably aware of the risks at hand here. But take us into this a little bit deeper, Ted, and kind of highlight some of those risks that you have to be aware of.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, having a large distribution to someone of a financial nature, especially if they're addicted to, drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be drugs and alcohol. It could be, gambling addiction too, I guess. So when you're dealing with that particular individual, you know, providing them with money, providing them with resources, it can enable that addiction. So you want to try to avoid becoming an enabler of that. So that's the first concern. Secondly, you want to try to, especially if they're in recovery, you increase the risk of a relapse if you do enable that individual. So you have to kind of avoid those old temptations and try to do what you can to prevent that from happening. You want to assess the situation for vulnerabilities, right? Are they vulnerable to bad influences, and are they surrounding themselves with individuals who are going to increase their likelihood of engaging in the type of behavior that's dangerous to them and to their families. What type of experience do they have with managing money? And you don't want to necessarily be in a situation where they don't know how to manage this type of money. And then if it's even more severe, giving them money, giving them assets that could impact their public benefits, right? So if they're getting some sort of public benefit because they're disabled as a result of their illness, their addiction, then giving them money outright could impact their ability to receive those benefits. So you want to take that into account when you're planning your estate. And then, what happens if the money runs out, right? So what kind of uh, situation is gonna remain for them, once the money that you're providing for them runs out. So these are all things that are risks that you kind of have to assess and acknowledge, before going into an estate plan when you're thinking about caring for a loved one who may be addicted to some sort of substance that could affect their life.
Yeah, so a number of risks there, obviously, that could make them put them in a worse position with that inheritance. Again, if you have questions for Ted, 718-233-2903. But let's talk about some of the options then, Ted, because I know you worked through these situations, and I think that's the biggest question for people is, hey, okay, I understand the risks. I know, what this could do for my child, whoever that I'm leaving this inheritance to. So what can I actually do about it?
Well, I mean, one of the first instincts is, consider disowning the individual, right? So don't give them anything, disinherit them, make it obvious that your intention is to prevent them from having any access to any funds that could enable their behavior, and cutting them off completely. That's an option. Not necessarily the best option. Really depends on the individual and the family, but that's one option. Another option would be to, set up a distribution mechanism that distributes funds in a predictable, smaller installment way, so that there's, a stream of money, but not necessarily enough, so that it would so dramatically increase the risks, that the individual would be more inclined to fall back on that bad behavior. Um, so that's a second. I mean, you can set up conditions, right? You can make it very clear that, the beneficiary will only receive inheritances or percentages of inheritances based on completion of certain things, whether it's rehab or it's, engaging in behavior that will prevent them from relapsing. Um, you can have a third party control the inheritance, a trustee of some kind, not necessarily a family member, who might not be willing to fall for the emotional entanglement that might result from a need of that beneficiary. So, someone who's a little bit more willing to be cold, so to speak, with regards to how funds are being distributed. You can use the inheritance to purchase assets and control those assets so that they don't, really cause damage to themselves. So that's an option as well. And finally, if the person is receiving benefits, or may be on the need for benefits, then setting up a special needs trust where the benefits can only be used for certain purposes, so that they would not lose whatever benefits they're receiving as a result of their disability. So these are all the different options that you have, when you're planning an estate, and you have a beneficiary who is, possibly addicted to some sort of substance that can really impact their lives negatively.
All right, so great breakdown. Obviously, there's a lot of different options. Again, that's kind of the reason why you work with an estate planning attorney with experience that can kind of take you through all these different options. And look, everybody's situation is different, so I know that one option that might work for you might not work for the next person. But reach out alatsislawfirm.com to go through your situation, figure out that best option. But I am curious, Ted, is there one direction that is commonly used more than the rest?
I would say, of the trusts that we've created that involve beneficiaries, that are going through things like this. I would say the distribution, that's made with milestones, and distribution of money in increments has been probably the most commonly used and probably most effective way of distributing, the assets. Um, just cutting someone off cold turkey is very difficult, certainly. And that, creates, can create other problems. So I would say that that's probably the most prevalent use. And then obviously, if they're in a situation where they're already on, disability benefits of some kind, then the special needs trust. So those are probably the two most implemented courses of action that we encounter.
All right. Well, again, every family situation is different. And when you do have addiction as part of that picture, estate planning really takes on a deeper level of complexity. And the goal isn't to punish or enable, as we know, it's to protect your loved ones and your legacy. And that's the whole reason why you build out this estate plan. So if you are in this situation, you find yourself facing similar challenges and really unsure what steps to take, please reach out, elastislawfirm.com or 718-233-2903. I know these are some pretty difficult decisions, but you don't have to make them alone. So please get in touch with Ted if you have any more questions. All right, Ted, we'll close it out on that note. Appreciate your time as always, and hope you stay cool out there.
You too, Ben. Thanks.